I'm so excited to see what you guys think of this. I saw it on Tim Pool last night and I was like, oh my God, he's getting so based. I don't know. I don't think that Tim was always like this, but I think he was hitting it out of the park last night in this one segment. It wasn't a planned segment. Anyway, welcome back to Far From Eden. It's good to see you. Sorry we're on a little late tonight, but that's just the way it goes some days. Also, just want to say a little housekeeping. Um, we won't be having a mic like this and like a computer cam for too much longer. I went ahead and I ordered the new camera that we've been talking about, new microphone to go with it. Like we're going to be set. I just have to figure out all the tech. So we'll struggle through that, but I'm excited because you guys have been patient with me, and YouTube is, it's paying for it a little slowly but surely. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna have better equipment. So I'm so excited to see what y'all think. So they were talking about kids in school and having cell phones in school, and they're kind of like, well, if they have something inappropriate on their phone and they show it to another child, particularly they were talking about AI and the kind of images that they can create of their classmates in various stages of undress, which obviously wouldn't really be them, but you know, it's terrible to think. And just anything like there's so much that could be on somebody's phone, even if you're you know good with your kid and maybe your child doesn't even have a phone, but then they go to school, so they're having this conversation talking about, well, could the Department of Education ban phones? And I'm thinking, like, ban the Department of Education? But so it got into a really good discussion, and I want to see what you guys think about where it goes, because it gets real interesting. And I thought, would this be something that the men folk would like if this came back? Let's see.
For that was just a simple movie. So these phones in schools, if a kid's like, look, and they show you the most graphic, you don't even ask for it, and a kid's like, look at this, because kids can be pretty dickish in school. Like I've had kids come up and do some pretty cruel shit to me, and like if a kid just shows someone some horrid shit, like, do you blame their parent? Do you have to guilt by association, or what do you do? What were you gonna say?
Well, I mean, like right now, they're literally just like, this is you naked. I mean, that's what they're doing. They got these AI generated. I mean, they could literally just like show you what seems to be you without clothes on.
Why we're buffering? It's weird.
I mean, that's how crazy AI is and how quickly it's erupted. I mean, and in terms of who do you appeal to first? I mean, my first thought would be the parents, but I guess everybody would deal with it differently.
Do you think it's like too tyrannical to petition public schools to ban, like the Department of Education to ban cell phones from public schools?
Maybe not. Maybe it's a good idea. I mean, it's very difficult to control, because of.
Sorry for all the buffering. I don't know what's going on. I've turned off other Wi-Fi here. Technology hates me. But it's interesting. We are at this place. Think about our grandparents, great-grandparents, thinking that you need school or the Department of Education to make these rules for children. It's literally like, I feel like I'm constantly saying, where are the parents? And you guys are probably like, well, what does this have to do with the men folk and stuff like that? Well, it has a lot to do with it, because why do we need schools to say, no, you shouldn't do that to the children? Why do we need schools to protect children from things that are harmful? Who's supposed to be doing that? The fathers, right? Well, it requires father, mother, family. We do not have that. We sometimes have married people, but if you're looking to the Department of Education and the school to tell your children what appropriate behavior is, like, who is the parent? And that's kind of the direction of the discussion. So it goes to, some questions about traditionalism. And hopefully we won't have too much buffering. I can't believe it's doing
For
that to
example,
us.
I have a young niece, and she's at school. This is in Italy. We have the same issues, and her parents told her not to bring. They never allowed her to have a phone. But when she goes to school, all her friends at school have a phone, so just play with their phone. So it's maybe this is a solution.
Homeschool your kids.
She is 8.
Homeschool.
Yeah, homeschool. Yeah.
Homeschool your kids.
Yeah.
Kids don't listen to you at home.
Homeschool.
Okay. Why did she say she is 8? What does that have to do with anything? Was she like, she's too young? And then she just homeschool. Like, people don't fully commit to it. I get it. It's her niece. It's not her child. But also it's like, you feel the hesitation. Like, what do you mean? Like, mothers should be taking care of their children? And that's where I'm getting to. When you don't have mothers anymore, and you don't have wives anymore, it because the wives are running the husbands off, and they're too busy kicking butt at work right now. This is where you get to. I mean, she's talking about her niece, so she doesn't have children. Another middle-aged woman with no children, like me. All right, let's continue. Thanks for keeping with me with the buffering. I have no idea. It's never happened to me with all the buffering. It's weird.
Yeah,
Really?
I think homeschool is
my kids are really young, and they listen as good as they can. They're 3.5 and 2. But I've also talked to parents that have done the homeschooling thing, and they often report that my kids don't listen to me,
and they don't listen in school either.
Right, but I've also heard stories from people that's just like, well, I couldn't teach my kid how to play guitar, even though I'm a guitar player. My kid will not listen to me, so he had to send his kid to, a professional, teacher. I mean, I know it sounds counterintuitive. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but
it doesn't sound counterintuitive. It sounds like you're not respected. It sounds like you haven't taught your child to respect you. I saw this a lot during the virus extravaganza in 2020. There were so many parents like, oh my gosh, I don't know how the teachers do it. And women were joking about, can we drink wine during school? Like, I was like, they're your children, right? You men are looking for mothers, right? Ooh, you're so bad. You're looking for mothers, right? Because you'd like to have someone to be the mother of your children, an actual mother. That does not mean it just came out of you. I've literally heard a mother refer to her children as crotch goblins.
This is the anecdotal stories that I'm hearing as I'm really trying to sort out what I'm going to do with these kids when it comes time to go into school. I'm totally conflicted about it. I got some time to figure it out, but I really don't know what the right move is.
I think it's
I think the right move is what humans did for 40,000 years, 50,000 years.
But we're not in that time anymore.
Yeah, now you got
we're into the vortex.
I can see why that phenomenon you're talking about happens. Like, the external authority is like, okay, it's not, my parents have been telling me what to do for 3-5 years. I'm whatever. You're telling me one more thing to do. This guy now is telling me something to do. He's fresh, so I've got some added intensity to this being told. So maybe if you have a tutor come over to your house and teach them with you and let the kids know you're as good as they are and you're equal authority, then they'll look to you with that value.
Yeah, perhaps.
Homeschool your kids.
It's probably the only solution.
I can't believe that Ian was saying, have a tutor come to the house and the kid will respect the tutor, and then the kid will see the tutor respecting you. So then, what do you see this? This is the father not being respected in the home. And Tim is about to straighten them all out.
Solution.
Or like do it in the backyard or get out of the house too. You think changing the venue might help? I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Maybe not.
It's really tough to say. The other thing is that like what I've heard is that like kids that have really bad home lives will behave at home because they're terrified of what their parents will do. But then they go to daycare or like a preschool and they're wild. They act crazy and they have problems at school. But kids that have a good home life, they act crazy at home, but they behave themselves outside of the home because they kind of have they get all that stuff out with their parents. But when they're with somebody that's not their parents, they already know how to behave. I mean, I talk to a lot of people that are parents. I'm really trying to sort this out for myself. And I think it's really, really complicated. It's more complicated than just homeschool your kids, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even back in the day, some dude would get a homestead in the middle of nowhere.
Right before Tim talks, hold on. It's not complicated. And why didn't he talk to people who had successfully homeschooled their children and were successfully homeschooling their children? If you are looking into things, look for the successful children and find out what those people did. You're just finding out the brainwashing where you hear the people like, oh, you can't teach your kids. They don't listen to you. And no, get your family in order. Tim, tell him.
Where with his family, he'd have like 4 or 5 kids and a wife, and the kids would farm and the kids would work. But
Great.
It's only
We're not back in the day, though. We're
right.
not back in the day.
So then what's the issue?
I will get back to you on that. I don't know.
Because
I'm
we're in
still
the
in the middle of
21st
it.
century, children have just stopped acting like children have for hundreds of thousands of years.
Exactly.
I don't think
hundreds
that's
or thousands of years.
I don't think that's necessarily a crazy thing to posit. Because I mean, like, look, I mean, we're just talking about how like you have AI generated nudes that people are showing each other of themselves in high schools.
But that's why
like,
you homeschool your kids.
I know, but
you don't give your kid phones.
You don't give your kid phones.
Yeah, don't give your kid a
phone. So when do you give your kid a phone?
Never.
16 maybe.
Okay, so you're 16-year-old in school.
Well,
you have your phone,
like,
huh?
No, you're not in school. You're homeschooled.
He can't, bless his heart. He can't handle it. He's like, but what about they'll be in school? No, homeschooled. Like, it's not clicking, right? He's like, but it's the 21st century. If you separate your family, if you set yourself aside, right, and you live outside the system, which is what so many of you men are doing. You're like, I'm minimizing myself as a target. I'm deciding to make just enough to get by because what am I trying to prove? Why do I need a big stupid house with a big stupid mortgage, right? And a stupid fancy car? Like, you don't need all that. And why? Like, you just are in a higher tax bracket, right? Better Bachelor's been talking about this a lot. So, you know, if you really are mindful about it, and you what would your child know? Like he said, the children are not different. A baby born right now doesn't know anything different than if it had been born 1,000 years ago, right? So you are responsible for creating that world, and it's the family. And when I say you, it's the father. He's the head of the family, right? But in order to do this, you would need the wife. And I want to know if it went back to this and you had a wife that was, you know, dedicated to supporting you in this sort of a life that Tim's describing, I wonder if you would say, yes, that's what I want. I want the woman that says, okay, you want to live in the middle of Idaho or, you know, Missouri? Okay, all right. And you start your family there, and you know, you're away from the cities, and then you have this sort of a lifestyle.
But I mean, like the problem of the phone technology still exists.
Neighbors,
yeah, friends. If we have a friend that has a phone, or they have their mom's phone or something,
so you don't.
And you just don't let them hang out at that person's house because they have a phone at the house. Yeah. That's intense. I mean, my mom wouldn't. I knew a kid in the neighborhood that put gasoline on the ground and lit it on fire, and they were like, ha, yeah. And I went home and I told my parents. I was like, it was cool. We were letting gas. And my dad was like, you can never hang out with him again. He's a fireman. And I never hung out with him again.
You can accept that moral degeneracy is here to stay, that children are going to get access to phones and scat porn and snuff and murder and all of these things. And there's nothing you can do about it. So give up. This is the position that conservatives have taken on abortion. Conservatives have said we cannot win the abortion argument, so abandon it. And Trump came out and said, well, let the states decide. They're literally saying it's baby murder, but the states can decide if they want to murder babies. They've abandoned the moral position.
Exactly.
This is why many pro-lifers are mad at Trump right now because he's not arguing. So if the argument is, look, we're in this era, you can't stop kids, they're going to do it, then accept your kids will grow up to be degenerates. It's going to happen. Have fun. You can't do it.
I love that. He's like, fine, then don't homeschool your kid. Then don't protect them from phones. Let them go. You have a choice. It's not, dude is struggling because he wants it to be easy. He wants it to be where he can live in the world, but not be of the world. And I used to think that was possible. And I'm starting to think it's really not. It's gotten so bad. He's struggling. He's got these 2 little children and he wants to protect them. But look at that. It's just, society and all of the sparkly things like phones and bread and circus. Well, he doesn't want to keep his children from the bread and circus. It's like the bread and circus are poisonous.
What do you think about it? Or you can homeschool your kids and reject it and do your best to keep your family away from this stuff.
And then perhaps they'll be regenerates.
Regenerates. Redemption pattern.
Regenerates.
The age of regeneration.
Redemption pattern from the generation.
Raising a bunch of regenerates.
I think the reason why, we had Nick Freitas on the show.
Great guy.
Talking about his family. And I was like, I feel like, I asked him about his family. And I mentioned the phase of, I hate you, Dad. And he's like, we never had that. And I was like, I figured, and I was going to ask you this because of just like his moral demeanor and the way he behaves and stuff. I don't think, I was like, based on who he is, he would have that phase where his kids were like, I hate you. And I said, I think the reason we've developed this I hate you, Dad phase is because parents leave their kids. How was it for tens of thousands of years? As soon as the kid was old enough, he was grabbing the wood to help the dad. He'd say, do what you can. He's like, okay, you're 6, you're old enough now, pick up that bucket of water and bring it over to me. And the kid would do it. And so that kid was with the dad and the mom all day working at the house, and working on the house was how you did things.
Exactly. Because the man would literally, build a house, or the community would build a house and they would live in it. He would maintain it. He would hunt, fish, provide the food. The woman is maintaining the house, cooking the food. There's work to do. I just wonder, if this was the setup, does that sound good to you? While the father is, taking the son to work, and, the son's doing what he can. The daughters are with the mom, helping prepare the food and learning what they're going to do when they're older. Of course, there's still play and there's still time for bedtime stories and, children, things for children. But also this time with the family, running the household as a unit.
Now today, dad leaves and the kids are sitting there with no dad. And then dad comes home and the kids have no idea what dad does. And then kids are spending most of their time and their authority figures are strangers. So now you're getting the, I hate you, dad or mom. Yeah. They're not going to listen to what you say because you are actually not their real parent. You're a biological parent, but you are not the person who has been there the whole time teaching them how to live. You've been an ancillary character there half the time, while the other half, it's been a group of strangers in a building who treat them like crap. And that's what we've been for 100 years.
My parents did a pretty cool thing where they unified. They had I was never able to get one of them to do something the other one wouldn't allow. They were behind my back, a solid unit. And so my dad would work for 2 days at a time. He's a fireman for 24 hours. He'd go work at a hospital as an orthopedic technician. Then he'd come back on day 3 and he'd be with us for a day. And so I didn't see him a lot. But because they were so unified, I felt like he was still present. And my mom would take us to go see him, give him lunch every once in a while, but I felt like he was still present. So when he was there, I still sensed his authority through her. And I could tell he was the man in the house when he was around.
And the way it used to be was that kids lived basically the same lives as their grandparents.
Yeah.
Granddad woke up and he'd tend to the crops and the chickens and he'd feed the pigs, and then he'd come in and then he'd take care of, house stuff. He'd be building something and the kids would watch him. And then when the kid was old enough, he'd be like, hey, hand me that hammer. Here, let me show you what I'm doing. Then the kid's a teenager and he's like, you're responsible for the chickens now. You're old enough. And then the kid would become an adult and be like, Dad, I'm going to get married. I'm 18 years old. And he's like, there's a very fine Mary Sue down the street. Wow, Mary Sue. And the families would come together and there'd be a dowry. Then they'd all come together and help build a house for the kid. And then the kid would grow up doing literally what his dad did, what his granddad did. And their lives were very similar and they were learning from each other. And then we industrialized. And then we were like, time to put kids in pseudo factories where the bell rings every shift change so they can be good little workers, take them from their parents and put them in the coal mines. And then all of a sudden the kids are not learning from their parents anymore.
Right.
We totally separated family. And then it's no surprise the level of degeneracy that we have now. It's like you ask yourself how we went thousands of years with zero degeneracy. And then in the span of 3 generations, we went as far as you could possibly go.
Well, that's
because we cut kids off from their parents.
And we haven't seen the last 2,000.
Ian's just gonna go on and talk about maybe there was other degeneracy in the past 2,000 years. And of course there was. We know there was debauchery and stuff like, Rome, but it's not like this. It's not like this. Tim is 100% right about we industrialized. But you know what else came with that he did not say? Feminism, right? We cut kids off from their parents. How on God's green earth did they convince women to give up their babies? And how did they convince men that their babies were better off learning and being not in the home, just outside the home in the building with strangers for the majority of the day? And like he said, that's the last 100 years. That's it. The idea of schools, public school, like it's brand new, and it's interesting because we all think about homeschooling as like this foreign thing, but that's what we did. And this video is not even about homeschooling. It's about family, because when you homeschool, it means that the mother is home with the children, teaching them. And it's more than just arithmetic and reading. It's values and things like that. And you would have the father doing what his father did, what his father did, and what his father did, and having the sons go into, if he's a carpenter, if he's, whatever his trade is, if he has a trade, if he sells things, or if they just have their own, crops and they go hunting and fishing and stuff. It's so important. And I think that if this were still the situation, if we hadn't industrialized and broken people apart like this, I think this is what men want. And I also think that it hasn't been that long, but we're so disconnected, because I think about Gen Z, the people in their 20s. And it's like, do they even know that was ever a thing? Do they even know that families used to be families and dad didn't go off to work somewhere? And mom certainly didn't go off to work. Work was at home. Her priority was the children. Her priority was the home and the husband. And then the children saw that and honored that. And this idea of protecting your children from the worldly things that are out there, so hesitant. These men are hesitant. And I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, yeah, they're afraid of what their wives will say. Maybe that's what that man's sitting there thinking. We don't know. But I just wanted to know what you guys think of that. If all of a sudden we could snap our fingers and go back to that sort of homesteading sort of lifestyle, would you guys take it? If the girls weren't used up, if it was Mary Sue down the road, right? What does that sound like to you? And I know it might be a little torture. Like, why are you asking us this? We're never going to have it. I don't know. It's getting pretty scary out there. If we get a grid down situation or government subsidies go away, there's going to be some Mary Sues that are like, I would love to be a wife. I would love to be a mother. It's interesting. Women get a little different when we get dependent. I don't know. I have this theory that we're supposed to be dependent. We're created, I mean, we are created in a way that we are dependent. When you look at the natural world, we are dependent on the masculine, version of ourselves, the man. We need that male of the species, you know. And it's always interesting to me because the atheists, it's like, aren't you like into biology and anthropology and stuff? Did you understand that the male is needed in the species? Like, that's true in the animal kingdom. What are you talking about? So I don't know. We need to get back to this. And I hope, one day, one way or another, we will. We will. It will reset. It's just a matter of when. I feel us being pulled in both directions. It does really feel like a war between good and evil, that we beyond what we can see. So thanks for watching that with me. I found it very interesting, and I think some of you guys will too. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So have a really good night. It's already, what is it? Oh gosh, for me, it's past my bedtime. So I hope you all have a good night and take care of yourselves. Rest well. I love you, and I will see you on the next one. And pretty soon we're going to have better equipment. It's supposed to be all coming tomorrow. So think good thoughts for me. Bye, guys.